All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is I'm a Funky Verb, and I'm here to do an Alpha League tier list. Now, I'm going to be pretty frank. I'm not the best player in this game. I am barely involved in this game so far. Rank 293, which sounds more impressive than it is. Um, if you really want to see some great players, anybody here in the top 20, excellent players. But I will say I've had very good stats in the 33 games I've played. 42% win rate, 81.8% top four rate. Um, I just came off a heater of a stream where we did six straight firsts, and I'm going to go over the characters that I think are the best, top to bottom. So first, we're going to start with our S tier. So in the S tier, the best character in the game, the best hero in the game, is Jenny. Jenny's passive, when taking damage, 15% chance to heal 50 LP, 50 HP, and that is any instance of damage. And then Holy Prayer, reset all debuff stacks and deal 150 magic damage. The magic damage is whatever, but resetting all your debuff stacks is genuinely pretty incredible. And then if we go into traits, if you go to Jenny, she has some really solid ones. Divine Affinity, I found a lot of success with. Just every time you heal, very good. Enhanced Favor, very good. And Fast Healing are all excellent. If you are going a more ultimate style build, Holy Light Surge is also really incredible. I'll say Lay on Hands hasn't really super impressed me. And Sunbathing is situational at best. But basically, the playstyle of Jenny is that you want to really go all in on the healing, focus on that, and then after that, she kind of just doesn't die. Jenny is really good at scamming out top twos, even if you're not a super good player. So that's why I would say Jenny is the best character of the game. Bit of an upset for me on the second best character of the game. I've been completely radicalized. I think Cole's insane. I He had a little buff on the most recent patch, and I think he's nuts. Base stats or whatever. His ultimate's very good. His passive is very good. Every second, absorb 1% of enemies' max HP and max mana. What makes this character Cole so good is there are a couple things in the early game that you can get at level 5 that really kind of change your game. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but every time Cole casts his ultimate skill, gain 100 max HP permanently. That's really good. I actually played a game earlier where a guy got this in the start at level 5 lobby, and he really ran the lobby until the hyper late game where I was able to outscale him because I was playing this combination right here, Death Call and Cutthroat. So, Death Call changes your passive triggers to every 0.6 seconds. So you're taking 40% of that cooldown off. So instead of every 2 seconds getting two, you get three procs. Um, every 6 seconds, instead of getting six procs, you get 10. So it does make a huge difference. And then Cutthroat, tripling your passive is incredible. But you can also play him with a more ultimate style. So you go here, you go here, you go here. Boom, boom, boom. And then you just take whichever one of these fourth. I definitely prefer Death Call, Cutthroat, and Countdown, or however you say this, into Death Call, Cutthroat. I've played games where you play in pure random. I've played games where you get a bunch of curse in the beginning of the game, a bunch of HP in the beginning of the game. Cole is incredibly flexible, which is one of the things that I really like about him. I think genuinely, if you're like me and you're a newer player, this is one of those that you want to click on almost every time. The one thing you might click on more as a new player is everyone's best friend, Aloya. the point printer. Um, so why is Aloya so strong? Aloya isn't actually that strong. Aloya makes drones insane. So Aloya, our last member of the S tier, this is the big thing you need to focus on. And then we can go over to his traits. And we can see here, if you can get early battle order into Infinity Command, and you are just buying mech like stuff the entire time, you create unkillable mechs that do unlimited damage and do everything you need. I would say the proper three generally, from when I've played this, is Battle Order, Infinity Command, and Protective Mech, because you're almost guaranteed to get 15 every single game. 20 level 20 is a little different. I try to aim for it every game, but you definitely don't get it every single game. But between that and just the fact that his ultimate actually does a lot of damage, 350 base damage is pretty incredible. And the drone's protecting your HP, which is already pretty high. You have decent attack speed. You have a lot of good base stats. I think if you were a beginner player, this is probably number one. I would say Cole is probably number two. But that is it for the S tier. We have Jenny, Cole, and Aloya. Moving on to our A tier, we have Asuka at the top of the A tier for me. I kind of went back and forth between Asuka and Merlina for this spot, but I've found that Asuka's incredible base stats, along with the ability to play pretty flexibly. I've seen this built with spell attack. I've seen it built with spell freeze. I've seen it built with. I've seen it built without spell as the main thing. Um, so this character is just really flexible, has really decent base stats. 1200 base HP is really good. And then we're going to look at Asuka's traits. I have not played Asuka because I ain't got money like that, but I've seen uh, Onibidama played quite a bit. Um, and this one's pretty crazy. This one's pretty crazy. There's just if you can combine this with this with this, it becomes very difficult um to kill it. And if you can get, I've seen some setups where you get healing and spell, and this thing just outputs a bunch of damage. It never dies. It kind of has almost that Jenny effect, where it's like no damage you do can really stick. And that's part of what makes Asuka so strong. Now to a character I have played a couple times, Merlina. Um, so the reason I was going back and forth is because Asuka's really annoying and really hard to kill, but Merlina can just kind of nuke you. Um, Base damage of 325 with a 30% chance to deal 50% extra damage is pretty incredible. And then, of course, obviously, there's a lot of ultimate boost in the game. There are artifacts that can give ultimate boosts. Obviously, building spell gives you some ultimate boost. And we have other ways to get ultimate boost. So, Plasma Blast just gives you a little extra damage. Deep Shock does really well with Spark Rhythm. If you can get kind of like chain casting. Thunderstorm is really good in games where you need to chunk. I think this is really good into specifically things like Jenny or Asuka. And then, of course, Cracking Lance is really good when you are able to play into those level 5 arenas. And then Lightning Rod is good in niche situations. If there's a lot of dodge in your lobby or the problematic player that you have identified. in your game is using evasion. Lightning Rod basically just kills that. Lightning Rod just runs them over. So I think Merlina is really good. Not super hard to play. I will say it is more important for Merlina than for Asuka to like really tack into those spells. Like you want to be hitting 40 spells as early as possible. You take something like specialization, which every 3 times you buy a crate in a row or a skill in a row, you get a skill of the same class, which in this case would be spell. Um, it's just really important to get to your max here. I would say out of the top 5 characters, this is probably the least flexible, even less flexible than Aloya. But it is very rewarding. It does a lot of damage, and I would highly recommend it. Next in our A tier is James. Um, James is just a straight gunner. He just deals a lot of damage. And he's also really good against Frost. Um, it's actually really interesting because I've seen some people go like attack inner fire James. Um, because not only are you going to clear all your frost, you're going to get all that inner fire stacking, and he just does a lot of damage. You'll see him very quickly kill people. We can get into his traits, and his traits include Piercing Bullet, which is okay. Walking Target isn't as good as the other enemy evasion, like dodge chance ruiner, but it's still something you'll take a lot of the times. Ruthless is crazy, especially in the early game. Um, Decisive Eradication, just more attack speed. Who doesn't like that? And then the main two that you'll often take is Chain Plan and Bullet Rain. You combine these two as a piercing bullet, and you're killing people in seconds. Like I've seen James setups with these three melts like fully stacked culls in seconds. So it's also one of the better matchups in the late game into Jenny. It's interesting because you'd think, because Jenny is on all procs of damage, that her healing would be good, but you're procking damage so many times that it kind of doesn't matter if 15 or 30% of the time she's healing a little bit because you're just going to kill her. James is one of those, if you get him to the late game, he is a very high chance of winning, but you also have a chance of just absolutely falling flat in the mid game. Some alternate ways to play James if attack just isn't happening. Inner Fire does a lot of the same things that you like. Curse is really good. Um, and I've even seen some like freeze James setups or dodge James setups that are okay. But I would definitely recommend giving James a shot. I think he's very strong. I think he is surprisingly flexible, and he just does a lot. Next, we are going to move on to Sylvie. Sylvie is very boomer bust. I have either won games on Sylvie or I've got eighth. There's just no getting around it. Sylvie is very strong at what she does, but she does struggle in the early to mid game. Her damage falls off pretty quickly. So in the mid game when she's struggling, it's very important to make sure that you are doing everything to save HP. Obviously, you want to stay above 1,000 gold as often as you can, but so things that I think are really strong. Quick Tumble's kind of crazy. It makes you go from 5 evasion stacks at the beginning of the round to 8, and that's really good. And then if you can combine that with Inner Sight and Acrobat, you're gonna do a lot of damage. You can also do Inner Sight and Swift Shot. Both are very good. Spiritual Focus is good in lobbies where you're facing other Sylvies or you're facing other characters that are just building dodge. Um, and then Showtime, I'm not sure exactly how it works. I'm not sure if it resets your passive or it just gives you one dodge. Ask the experts, folks. I'm just putting this out because I haven't seen any type of content like this on YouTube. And then we're going to wrap this part of the video up with the end of our A tier. And the end of our A tier is going to be with my personal favorite at the moment, Emerald. So what do I like about Emerald? His base stats are pretty shit. But after each battle, he gains 100 max HP and 3% size, up to 20 times. This boy get big. I've had several games where Emerald gets up to 10,000 HP. And then Boulder Throw, deal 250 magic damage. Pretty cool. Decent base damage for the early game. But where Emerald really shines, and the reason I say he's so flexible, because Emerald, it is way more important to get his traits online than it is to get his health maxed out. So there are several different ways to play this, but one of my personal favorites is to go Obsidian, Crystal, and Amethyst. So you are going to do obscene damage. You can also go Obsidian, Crystal, and Amber. They do pair very well together. But yeah, Obsidian and Crystal, if you can get them going early, are incredible. Ruby is also one that if you can get it, especially in the early game, it'll really help you win streak most of stage 1, stage 2, and maybe even into stage 3. It's really hard to just deal with all that max HP. There is an alternative setup if something like this just isn't materializing and Spell is available as a skill in the game. Amethyst. So this is what I was playing earlier today on stream. I did play 2 games of Amethyst Emerald, and it does ultimate skill damage increase by 10% of Emerald's max HP. Remember when I said I got him up to 10,000 HP? Yeah, it gets really gross. With this, you often want a spell crit setup. So you'll want Amethyst, Crystal, and then I just kind of like Ruby the best out of these 3, out of these remaining 4 as a pair. It just gives you a lot of flat HP. It gives you an extra 150 damage on your ult. And with the crits, you just want to get the rare magic damage crit. And if you can get your critical strike up, you can get your Amethyst up, you can get your Ruby up. I have seen this ult deal upwards of like 3k, 4k per rock. And a lot of times when you're playing spell, you are just spamming out these rocks, and nothing can really keep up DPS wise. Plus, they're going to have a hard time killing you because by the end of the game, you have 10k HP. The other way you can play him is just as a normal beater. I did mention these 3. So you want to get HP, but you also want to get attack, inner fire, something along those lines that increases your projectile speed, your attack speed, whatever. And you will hit like a fucking truck. The third setup, probably the easiest way to play him, probably also the worst way to play him, in my opinion, is Ruby Jade Amethyst. So the logic here is you get hella HP, and now you're stacking 60 armor, magic resistance on it, and every time you throw a rock, boom, big damage. Very cool. But the minus 50% attack speed is a significant nerf. I've won games with Jade, it's fine. But I would say out of all of them, it's the one I'm like least impressed with. Oftentimes when you do this, it's because you're going HP healing, HP shield, somewhere along that line. So those are the basic setups for Emerald. And then I'm going to I want to set this up to where I don't reveal the rest of my tier list, but I'll pull it up for the end of the video. End of part 1. Yeah, that's always the fun part. I should have been prepared for this. It's alright, I'll edit this out. Cool. So, in our S tier, we have Jenny, Cole, and Aloya. They're all incredible. Every time you get a chance to play them, you should. And that's just kind of my take on those. Then, in your A tier, you have Asuka and Marlena, a little more specialist based, but once you learn them, they can perform really well for you. James, who I think is really good in the late game, Sylvie, who I think is really good in the late game, and Emerald, who has a decent early game that can parlay into a very good and flexible late game. So that is the tier list so far, and join me in part 2 of this video to talk over the remaining characters. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.